friend named Adiko. He has a certification in ISO 14. Okay, Wisdom says he's not hearing me. Wisdom, can you hear me now?
Fiona, continue. The other guys will look at it and resolve it. Okay, continue.
Great. So here with me today is Mr. Wilfred Nene Adiko. He has a certificate in ISO 14001, 2015 Environmental Management System Lead Auditor. He also has a professional diploma in ESG from ICAG. He holds a certificate in carbon balance from EDS Global and a chartered accountant from ICAG. He also has a certificate, he's a certified compliance officer, an ISO 27001 lead auditor. He has a certification in data science and machine learning and a BSc in admin. He has a certificate in fraud. He's a fraud examiner from ACFE USA and a certified information system auditor. He also holds a certificate in risk and information system control and a certificate in digital money. Mr. Wilfred Adiko has a proficiency in evaluating ESG performance using GRI, SASB, TFCD, TCFD, and has expertise in project management, planning, execution, and performance monitoring. He has conducted advisory work for companies on administration, internal and external audits, tax advisory for both public and private. He currently serves on the ethics committee of the Ghana Football Association and is an ordained Reverend Minister at the Kodesh Family Church and has an interest in engaging young people and guiding them to unearth their potential through innovation, technology, and personal development. Thank you very much, Mr. Adiko, for taking time off your busy schedule to join us today. We also will be joined by Professor Kingsley Opoku, a Vice Dean from the KNUST School of Business. He will be, along our discussion, he will be emphasizing on materiality assessments. Prof, if you are here, give us a wave so that we can know you are here. In the meantime, thank you very much for taking your time to join us. Thank you very much, Mr. Adiko. So, Mr. Adiko, over to you.
Okay, thank you very much, Fiona. And I'm very honored to be on this panel. I hope I'm sharing my screen now. Please, can you confirm if you can see my screen?
I can see your screen. Please, if you can see Mr. Adiko's screen, can you give us a thumbs up? Great.
Okay, thank you. So this evening, we are going to be talking about practical steps to be able to implement ESG in an organization. And first to go about this, we have put this together based upon our experience on what we have done in the past. And in Makers and Partners, our ESG team is made up of these key people you are seeing on your screen. Professor K. Opoku Apia, who is a Vice Dean at KNUST and a seasoned ESG consultant. And then also AC Ribeiro. We have a partner in India, Avinash Kumar, who is part of our team. The whole team structure is as you see below. Now, today, our topic is on steps to implement ESG for an SME or any business at all. And like I said earlier, experience, we have been able to put together 11 steps that we believe can help a business implement ESG. The first thing I would like to talk about is what is ESG. So the ESG stands for environmental, social, and governance. And what I want us all to understand is that ESG is a management system. So it is a system which leadership in an organization adopts. And the main purpose or the reason behind it is for the organization to be sustainable or to be responsible in its day-to-day operations. Responsible in the sense that the organization's impact to the environment is properly managed, right? Particularly the negative part on the environment is properly managed. And then also the interaction of the organization and the community, as well as its internal stakeholders, are efficiently managed. So that speaks to the S part of it. And then the G part of it is the fact that the organization puts in structures, right, to ensure fairness, to clearly identify responsibility and accountability, and then to ensure that the organization is governed responsibly. So in a nutshell, and for all of us to understand, ESG is a management system that is implemented by management. We all know for businesses, we have a function like internal audit, we have a function like finance. They all operate to ensure that the finances of the business are managed properly. And then the internal audit also ensures accountability within the system. So those are functions. But when we come to ESG, it's a management function, and it is implemented to ensure that the business in its operation within the environment, with its internal, external stakeholders, are well structured so that it drives efficiency and drives sustainability. Now, the next question is that why is ESG now a big thing that is being discussed in every quarters, and organizations are thinking about adopting it? So first, I will talk about regulatory push, and it is interesting to note that in Ghana, the Institute of Chartered Accountants in 2004 issued a publication or an announcement indicating that Ghana is adopting IFRS on sustainability, the S1 and S2. So based upon that drive, then it brings the obligation on organizations that falls within those requirements, or those organizations that must comply. Then there is the need for them to be able to now think about implementing ESG within the organization. We've also seen sometime in 2019, the Bank of Ghana, who is the regulator of the financial institutions like banks, savings and loans, and microfinances, issuing directives to banks to start the journey on adopting ESG. Then we have also seen on the Ghana Stock Exchange, where the Ghana Stock Exchange has also issued guidelines to listed organizations on the Ghana Stock Exchange to be able to adopt. And they've been given some time, to work within a certain time frame to adopt. And then just sometime last year or late 2024, we also saw the National Insurance Commission also giving directives to insurance companies. So you see that regulated institutions are on the track or on the journey to adopt ESG. And this is coming because of regulatory push that is driving it. Then as a worldwide concern, right, there's this talk about global warming and all those things. So these concerns about climate is driving organizations to be responsible. First of all, the drive was on government, and then it has cascaded down to organizations. And now organizations are also contributing or making the little effort to make sure that their operations are sustainable, because the first thing is that resources are not finite. It can get exhausted. So it must be used in a responsible way for future generations. Then the other drive is what I looked at as the adoption guidance issued by the Institute of Chartered Accountants. And in that guidance, they have phased it into 3. So there are those who are voluntary adopters, and those voluntary adopters are organizations that believe or have assessed and know that they are ready, or they have started the journey already. So those ones started as far back as January 2024. and they are classified under the mandatory adopters. And there are many organizations in Ghana like that have gone on that path. Then there are the ones that, per the guidance issued by the ICA, they are referred to as those that mandatorily they must adopt. And these are specifically identified as the significant public interest entity organizations. So organizations that, for example, are regulated or are listed on the Ghana Stock Exchange, or their debt and equity are originating from public sources. These are organizations that mandatorily they must adopt. And for them, their beginning period is from 1st of January 2027. So from now to that time, it is very crucial that such organizations must start preparing. And then there are the other mandatory adoption. So the other mandatory adoption, the key thing that we must know from the other mandatory adoption is that it targets all companies in Ghana that are registered under the Companies Act, but then it gives some exceptions, or it cuts out clearly those who qualify. Okay, so one of the exceptions is that if it is a company that is having a turnover of less than 40 million Ghana cedis, they are not mandatory for them to adopt, but they are encouraged to adopt. The reason is that they must, ESG drive some benefit or give some benefit, so they are encouraged to adopt. So those ones come under the non-mandatory. So if you are not in that category as a company registered in Ghana, then it is mandatory upon you to register. And then the last phase is for NGOs and then for government institutions. For them, there's no guideline at the moment. The reason is that a specific standard to regulate them is not really developed or is in the pipeline of development. So no specific guideline has been given to such organizations. But like I said, it is encouraged. So if you look at some of our public institutions in Ghana, you could see that some of them have started a journey considering things of ESG into the operations so that they can drive the benefit. Another driver is that globally, and even in Ghana, there's an intentional discounted funding to support organizations that are going green. So in Ghana, you see some banks setting aside funding to support organizations that intend to, for example, adopt renewable energy or build ESG into their operations to be able to be responsible or to manage their impact in the environment. So these are some of the regulatory drivers that is pushing ESG. Now, the other thing I want to drive to now is the practical steps to implementing ESG, the practical steps. From my experience, we have seen that the whole journey can be put into 11 steps, 11 practical steps that as an organization that wants to begin that journey would follow and would successfully implement. And these 11 practical steps, from my experience too, we have categorized it into three main parts. The first part is what we call the strategy, assessment, risk, and governance. And then the second part, which is the second phase or stage, is what we call the initiatives, policies, measurements or KPIs, and then capacity building. Then the last bit is the data reporting and then disclosures. Now, to begin the journey, the first step, like I mentioned, is the area where you do your strategy, assessment, risk, and then all the governance things. When it comes to strategy, what is important is that an organization that wants to go on the ESG journey must go back and look at its strategy, the vision, and the mission of the organization, and be able to reinvent it or rethink it so that it can reflect what they want to do as far as ESG is concerned. So for example, in rethinking their mission, they want to reflect that they care about their emissions into the environment. or they care about keeping a positive relationship with their external stakeholders, particularly the community that they operate in. So the beginning point is looking at your goals, looking at the goals of the organization, and seeing which of the principles under the ESG they will want to aspire, they will want to align with, and then build it into their vision or recraft a new vision. That way, when there is a vision, which is what the company believes in, it serves as an enabler to drive ESG within the organization. So the first point is that leadership in the organization must look at their strategy again. Now, in the course of looking at the strategy, it is important for the organization to do what we call the need assessment. After putting together your or recrafting your vision and all those things, the next thing is to do what we call your baseline. So the baseline will basically help the organization to know their state now as far as ESG is concerned, and then craft where they want to be so that the gap between it, they know the specific interventions that must be put in place to realize the objective that they are looking at. So the baseline assessment involves a critical step, which we call materiality assessment. And at a point, I will allow Professor Kinsling to come on and then talk a little bit more about the materiality assessment. So the materiality assessment, the key thing that we must all understand is that it is the stage where the leadership of the organization or the working group that has been put together to drive and implement ESG undertake to engage its stakeholders. And these stakeholders, we mean both internal and external, and take feedback from them regarding what is really relevant as far as ESG is concerned, as far as the various principles under ESG is concerned. So conducted through a workshop or a stakeholder meeting, and then all the principles under each of the pillars. For example, if you take environment, the key principles under environment, it's all listed out. You go through the process to list them all out. So let's take an organization that is, for example, is into the manufacturing of water. Okay, the company manufactures water, and they have congregated to do the baseline assessment, and it brought in all their stakeholders. So if they take the E side, which is the environment, one of the environmental factor is water, because the company's main source of production is water. Okay, so the thing is reliable source of water. Where do you get them from, right? So these are key things that the business is picking from the environment. So when they are doing their materiality assessment, they must identify all the factors within each of the pillars. And then when they identify them, they go through a process of iterations to prioritize the ones which are important, the ones which are significant at the point in time. At the point in time when they are doing their materiality assessment or they have begun the journey. And when they go through that exercise and they prioritize, then they will be able to identify the very important ones, the very significant ones. And then those very significant ones, they are the ones that they would use to be able to begin the journey. One of the key things to do in your materiality assessment, like I mentioned, is identifying what are the climate risk factors and what are the ESG risk factors, okay? So that is also a whole process where the climate risk that affect the business operations are clearly articulated. And then under each of the ESG pillar, we also articulate all the factors under it and then properly prioritize them so that we can be able to build initiatives around them to, embed ESG into the organization. And then the last bit is about the governance. So the governance means that once the company has gone through the process of doing its strategy, doing its needs assessment, conducting its climate risk and ESG risk, and putting all of them together to know the relevant factors, right? Then they need to put in the structures would help to be able to assign and define roles, responsibilities, and accountability within the organization. So who is to report to who as far as ESG is concerned? How is improvement going to be done? How is progress going to be measured? The governance structure would help us to know who is responsible, whose role is this, and then how accountability is taken across the organization. Once this step is completed, this step 1 to 4 is completed, then the organization has started the journey to embed. And this journey is very initial, but has created the concept, has practically shown that if I go on this path on ESG, it is likely I will be very successful on it. Now, moving on, after you've done stage 1 of phase 1, where you have done your strategy and all those things, and you have clearly articulated what the relevant factors are, you move on to the next stage, which is the implementation and measurement. The first thing is that you develop your ESG initiatives. You develop your ESG initiatives. So like I said, after you have done your materiality assessment, you have the information of what is relevant. Things like initiatives, matters like things in the environment which are relevant for the organization, maybe things like energy efficiency, water conservation, as far as the environmental side is concerned. And here, if you are talking about like a water making company, they are looking at water, the source of water, how they can use water very efficiently and not minimize losses or waste and all those things. So once you are able to come out with what the factors are, the ESG factors are, or the key things that are relevant to your organization, you begin to develop initiatives to support it. And here again, you have your working group, right? And then they do all the brainstorming and then the consultation and pick those specific factors and then build initiatives around them. Some of the challenge here is that sometimes in designing the initiatives, a lot of organizations tend to look at it from the corporate social responsibility point of view. Yes, corporate social responsibility point of view is the beginning, the very early stage of that. But when we come to ESG, it goes more than that. So we build initiatives to really embed or to really develop the specific ESG factors that we believe are relevant. The next thing is that in the process of building the initiatives, it's not just writing memos or communicating it to the organization or everybody in the organization or going on a journey to do the things. But it is so important that the organization must build policies, processes, and procedures to support those particular initiatives. So let's take one initiative like energy efficiency. So recently, in an instance of a client that we recently engaged with, one of their concerns was energy efficiency. And in building their initiatives, they came up with very interesting ideas. So things like replacing their bulbs with LED. And then also, one of the interesting things that I remember they did was that organization was in a high rise, not a very high rise, I think about 3 floors or 4 floors. So they decided that within a certain period in the day, the lift is turned off and everybody is encouraged to use the lift. And they created interesting stories behind it. For example, if you are using the lift, your heart thanks you because you are exercising, right? And then another initiative I remember they put in that in the morning when they report to work, between the period of say 8 to about 10 o'clock, it is agreed that the air conditions stays off and the windows are open for fresh air to come in, right? So this was some of the things they put together for energy efficiency. Now, these are very nice initiatives, but to keep it going, it is very important that it must be supported with PPPs. So there must be policies clearly laid out, documented, circulated, and then archived in the place where everybody can go there to reference and read and understand and know what is expected. And then there must be continuous refreshment of the PPPs to all staff so that it becomes a way of life for that particular organization. So PPPs are very, very important to help embed the initiative. Then to make sure that you are progressing, it's very important that you measure whatever activity you are doing to embed that initiative. So it starts by first coming up with what the initiative is or the activity that support the initiative, then putting it. So in the organization that I gave the example, their energy efficiency, maybe one of their targets was that on a month-by-month basis, they should be able to save like 5,000 Ghana cedis in power consumption. Okay, so you have to put a target, and then when you have put in a target, you begin to measure your progress. You begin to measure your progress. So it requires you making sure that everybody becomes aware, everybody is compliant, nobody is driving on the lift, the light goes off when they want it to go off in the evening, the air conditions are off, somebody should be driving it. And then at the end of the month, they would take the readings for energy consumption, take the readings for energy consumption month by month, and somebody will be reviewing. And then feedback will be that we are progressing, we are not doing well. If we are not doing well, what intervention do we need to put in to be able to reverse the trend, which is not positive? I remember I was talking to with one of the insurance company, True Life, and they have this initiative about paper usage. And it's been the policy or the initiative cast across all their branches. So periodically, they do a review to understand the usage. And in one such instance, they identified that one branch was, consuming too much paper, right? Quickly, because they were collecting data and because they were measuring progress, they could see deviations, and quickly specific interventions were made to be able to address what was the root cause for the high paper consumption and all those things. Measurements, very, very important, but it starts with target. You set the target, you take data, and then you can see your progress. Now, once you've done all this, you have done the initiatives, done the PPPs to support it, put in the metrics, and you are measuring nicely. The people that have to operate it must be trained. They must become aware of it. They must know about it. They must be part of the process. So as you are building the initiative, you must understand that all your stakeholders must be brought on board. Employees, all levels of employees must be trained. The training is not just a one-off training. It must be a continuous training so that there will be a proper alignment behavior to the intentions that the business has put together. So awareness, orientation, new staff that are joining are given the orientation. And then also we must build the capacity for data collection. That's one of the big issues in ESG journey, particularly when it comes to reporting. When it comes to reporting, you need data. You need data to be able to measure your progress or measure the impact that you have taken. So very, very important that we create awareness, and very, very important that we create the sources for data collection. So let me give you a practical example. Like if there's an initiative to reduce or to manage the use of paper within the office, first source of data is maybe from procurement, where requisitions are made to buy paper. So whoever is the champion for the ESG and for the person, for champion for ESG, must work with the procurement people to understand the type of data that procurement can give and the convenience with which procurement can give that data on a regular basis, so that in designing their matrix, it is clear. And when you ask the procurement people to give the data, it is also clear. Then the next thing is the usage. In most organizations, they have printers where it can count the paper usage. Okay, so you need to work with IT so that IT will make sure that those counters are effectively working. And there's a centralized way where the IT person can draw the data, right? So you need to sit with the IT person that manages the IT infrastructure with the business, so that you can design how you can collect the data as far as paper usage is concerned, and then be able to measure and see progress over the period of time. So if it's an organization that has different locations, scattered locations, and they are using a network system for their printers and all those things, that becomes easy. But if it is not so, and they are not on the network and the printers are standalone, then you must understand how you must work with the various control points where you can collect data, accumulate the data, analyze the data, and then make sense out of it. So that's the capacity building, and then the workshop, training everyone and making sure that everyone is on board. Then the final stage is data, which I've talked a lot about data. You need clean data, you need reliable data. How does it start? It starts by how you design the data collection points. If you don't do that and you just think that people will give you the data, then you are mistaken. You must work with the people, understand where the data will come from, work with them to agree how the data will be collected. It must not be a tedious process at all. It must be a simple process to collect the data which is relevant for those of us who have to analyze and measure and give information about progress. So data that has to be collected from the social side, from the environment side, and then from the governance side. The team must work together. The implementing team must sit together and agree how that will be done. Once the data is collected, like I said, it goes through the process of analyzing, it goes through the process of reporting and disclosures and reporting. And it is very important that anytime you are beginning this journey, it is very important that you adopt a standard that will be the framework under which all your initiatives under ESG will be done. So for example, as I mentioned earlier in Ghana, the drive is to use IFRS on sustainability, which is the S1 and then the S2. So a company that adopts this will look at all the requirements under that, implement according to that, and then be able to make their disclosures and reporting in line with that. That is what is available in our environment. If it is an organization which is in the public sector, there are other standards that can be used, like GRIs, which are also GRIs are global reporting initiatives. These are also very good standards that can be used to be able to implement an ESG program in an organization. So here too, I would want to say strongly that a company must work within a specific standard. That way, measurement becomes easy. And that way, different organizations, we can compare different organizations, the progress made by different organizations once they are in the same sector. The other thing that we must also understand is that because there are various sectors of the economy, organizations operate within various sectors of the economy, at any time that you are adopting your ESG, the emphasis will be different. So let's take, for example, a financial institution and a manufacturing company. In designing their ESG roadmap, their emphasis will be different. As much as a bank may not see so much of their impact, negative impact of the operations on the environment, you could see that such financial institution give credit to companies, to clients whose operations have very heavy negative impact on the environment. So the bank is not directly doing it, but because they are giving facility to a client, the client is heavily polluting the environment. So the emphasis, as far as the bank is concerned, will be different, and the emphasis on the manufacturing company also will be different. These are all things that must be considered. And when you take a specific standard will guide you exactly how to do it if it is a manufacturing concern, and how to do it if it is a financial institution or any other organization. So that's the key thing. Once you have done all these things, it's important that you report. Report when it's good, report when it's bad, and then indicate commitment to improvement. Very, very important. So these three main things: report when it's good, report when it's bad, and then indicate commitment to improvement. Very, very crucial in these things. And transparency is one of the key things as far as ESG is concerned. There are other areas that I want to talk about, particularly if a company has successfully gone on a journey for ESG, how they can use that as an enabler to access green funding. But before I go on that, if Professor Kingsley is on the line, I want to hand over to him to speak about materiality assessment for a few minutes, then I can move on to the second part of my presentation. Professor Kingsley, please, if you can unmute and then talk. Hello, Professor Kingsley. Fiona, please, can you confirm if we have Professor Kingsley on the line?
Prof is not on the line. Prof is not on the line,
Yep.
Sadiko. Looking at it, you'd have to proceed.
Okay, that's fine. Once again, before I proceed, just to rehash again on the materiality assessment, because it's a very key factor in the process. The materiality assessment helps the organization to identify or articulate the relevant ESG factors at a point in time, which is of concern to the organization. And once you have identified all those things, you move on to prioritize. The process of identifying it is stakeholder engagement. And this stakeholder engagement is with your internal stakeholder and then your external stakeholders. So your external stakeholders, you need to do your stakeholder analysis, identify all those who are your external stakeholders, and then engage them to give you feedback on exactly what in the environment is of concern, what in the social side or the governance side is what concern to the organization at a point in time. The reason why I'm emphasizing at a point in time is because materiality assessment is not a one-off exercise. It is not a one-off exercise. So in a particular year, you may find certain factors being ranked high. But if you moved into another year, it may change. Okay, so the process for materiality assessment is usually an annual thing that has to be done so that the organization will always be focused on those environmental factors that are relevant. There are some that can remain relevant throughout. There are some which may change as time goes on. And so your materiality assessment will help you to identify those ones. And when you identify them, you begin to take initiatives on it to drive the necessary improvements within the organization. Now, the next thing I want to talk about is that
before you proceed, we have Professor Hinkan here with us, and also to continue our schedule, we have about 10 minutes to end the presentation.
Okay, thank you very much. So I'll be quick on this. What I want to say is that ESG today is a very good opportunity for organizations to access credit. And if you remember, I mentioned that there's an intentional discounted funding to drive that. Intentional discounted funding to drive that. And that's what we call the green funding. Okay, so for an organization to go on that path, the first thing is that they must understand themselves or do the assessment phase. So see how ready you are, if there are gaps within your ESG activities, or your ESG reporting, you begin to put in the improvement to close all those gaps. And then usually you get a consultant to be able to support you on that one. So you see, you want to do a gap assessment to see where you are and where there are some corrections to be made so that you can be able to move on to assess the funding. Now, to assess the funding is the typical business process where you do your business plan to support the application. But this time, when you are designing your business plan, your unique selling point or the point that you need to progress or project very loudly is the ESG factors that is driving positive impact to the organization. For example, they are contributing to reducing operational costs. They are making the organization favorable in the sense of the community within which they operate in. And these are all indicators that a business will do well. Okay, so anyone who's building your business plan, the amount of accessing green fund, these are the key things that they must consider. Okay, and in the normal business plan process, you do the business overview. Remember, your vision and mission, it has been enhanced to reflect the fact that the business ESG compliant. Your problem statement is also very important to show that accessing the funding is going to be used to enhance an environmentally friendly project and all those things. And then you do all your stakeholder analysis. As you do your market analysis, you must also give the factors that makes you outstanding. And these factors that makes you outstanding is the fact that you are going green. Okay, so these are the things that a professional who is doing that for you will really emphasize and make it come out so that when you submit your business plan to any of the institutions that consider such things, you are much more favorable in getting it. So once you go through the process and you are done, you prepare your pitch plan, you highlight all the green activities that makes your business suitable to be accessing those funds. And the good thing is that in Ghana, there are those funds available where organizations can access. However, it is so important that the business would have built into their operations all these ESG considerations. And there's clear demonstration that it is making a positive impact onto the organization. And this will be demonstrated as the key factors to be considered in granting you the access. So yes, it's an opportunity. And that is what we believe that organizations that go on this journey, if they want to access green fund, they must look at in accessing. Thank you very much. Over to you, Fiona.
Thank you very much, Mr. Adiko. This has been very insightful. So we'll open room for questions. If you have questions, feel free to put them in the chat box or raise your hands. But then, Mr. Adiko, I have a few questions for you in waiting for others to ask their questions. I know you've said a lot. You've talked about the drivers, but then again, I want to know, with your experience, what is ESG and why is it necessary for organizations in Ghana to adopt it? And also, if organizations want to adopt ESG, how would they know they are ready? And what steps should they follow to adopt? If you can clarify, briefly talk about this.
Okay, thank you very much, Fiona, for this very powerful question, two-in-one question. So the first thing is that we must all understand that ESG is a management system. Okay, so for some of us that work in maybe a technology-driven companies, there is one management system we call ISO 27001. So ISO 27001 is a management system for information security management. So if you take ESG, it's also a similar thing like that, all right? So businesses implement it to drive a responsible, sustainable operations or business. Responsible and sustainable in the sense that your impact in the environment is properly managed, particularly the negative ones. is properly managed. You maintain a very healthy relationship with your external stakeholders, like the community within which you operate in. And then you have implemented structures that drives accountability, that drives fairness, and that makes sure people know what their roles, responsibilities are, and are treated fairly. Some of the governance structures may also deal with issues of corruption, anti-money laundering, and things like that. So in a nutshell, that's ESG. It's a management system. It is environment, social, and then governance. And management adopted. In Ghana, the drive is coming because of the country as a whole having adopted IFRS on sustainability. So that's the key definition of ESG. Now, how will you know you are ready, right? That's a difficult one, but all I'll say to that is that today there's a drive because of the adoption of IFRS on sustainability. So you must know where your company falls. Okay, so if your company is a listed company, it's not negotiable. It's something that you must start the journey. Then, if your company falls under the mandatory, and I told you that in the mandatory, there's a clear definition of who falls in the mandatory. Okay, and then there's a clear definition of those who do not fall under the mandatory. So this is something that a company must know, and then they must know that it must begin the journey. Okay, you start the journey by doing your baseline. The baseline will tell you the extent of work that is required to be done. The baseline will tell you what you have already done, because most organizations have some few things that they are doing that also is reflected in the standard. So particularly how you are managing your staff, work-life balance, you have HR policy, you have waste management, how you manage your waste, you have health and safety and all those. So there may be a few things, it just needs some enhancement, okay? But the starting point is that we need to do the baseline to be able to see the extent of work that is required so that you can be able to start the journey. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mr. Adiko. I've taken some things from what you said. So before we come to Samuel Ofei's question, you mentioned that ESG is a management system and it's also a non-negotiable. Yes, it's a non-negotiable. We have a lot of people saying ESG is expensive. It seems it's expensive. If so, how can businesses draw benefit from ESG to enable them consider adoption and continue maintaining it?
Okay, thank you very much. So yes, it's expensive. I will not deny that. Okay. So for example, if your company has an internal audit department, it's not free. The people working in the internal audit department would have to be paid. Do you understand me? Pay their salary. If there's a director there, the director has to be provided with a car and all those. And then the next question is that, does it contribute to the bottom line? Directly, you can't see a contribution to the bottom line. But once it drives accountability, okay, it preserves the bottom line. It doesn't contribute to it, but it preserves it. It makes sure that everything that has to go into it comes into it, okay? So in the same way, if you look at ESG, we will say it is cost because we don't see it directly contributing to the bottom line. But this is what it does. It drives efficiency within the organization. Just take the example that you have put in initiative for energy conservation, and it is showing you progress and on month-to-month progress, where your electricity bill is coming down. Okay, so it is preserving your bottom line. You've put in issues like managing your waste into the environment. Okay, it gives you a good name. It makes you favorable in the eyes of your community where you operate in and all those things. So these are things that drives efficiency and effectiveness in the operation of the business, and they go in to preserve the bottom line. So yes, it's cost, because you don't see a direct contribution, but it preserves. And businesses that are in the non-mandate reached to do it so that they can draw the benefit that comes from ESG. They are not mandated to do it because they fall under the non-mandatory ones, but they are encouraged to do it. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mr. Adiko. So we have a few questions in the chat box. So from Samuel Ofe, what key activities would an insurance company that voluntarily adopts ESG have to go through to achieve effective implementation?
Okay, so for an insurance company, they come under the regulated entities. So there's no question about voluntary. Okay, there's no question about voluntary. Actually, the National Insurance Commission has given a guideline on the roadmap for adoption for insurance companies. The next thing is that is the next question, or the next part of the question is successful implementation. I would repeat again, the successful implementation for ESG starts with first redoing the strategy of the business, looking at the strategy and tweaking the strategy to show the aspirations with respect to any of the ESG pillars, either talking to environment, talking to social, or talking to the governance side. Okay, so when that is done, it becomes easy to reorient or to redirect the organization onto the journey to embed ESG into the organization. So after the strategy side, I think and I believe the next step is taking feedback from your stakeholders by telling you that which ones are very, very relevant to consider. And in the case of insurance companies, one of your main stakeholders is the National Insurance Commission. Okay, so they would want to provide input into what is relevant. The reason why insurance companies falls into that category is that they hold or they hold public funds in trust. You know, people make contributions towards a risk, and it is expected that when the risk materializes, they must honor. Okay, so these are things that are very concerned to the National Insurance Commission. So they will be things that they will be flagging, particularly in your governance structure. Okay, they will be flagging it in your governance structure, and they'll be telling you that those things are important. So when you take the feedback from the stakeholders, it makes you to identify what is important and what you must address and what you must build initiatives around. And then the last thing I will say is the measurement. If you put in something and you don't measure, you will not see your progress. Okay, if you are not doing well, you will know. If you are doing well, you will know. You see, so when you put in the structure or you put in the initiative, you must put targets and measure yourself against the targets so that you stay on track. Thank you very much, Fiona.
Thank you very much, Mr. Adiko. We also have
there's somebody
Joshua
with a hands up, Samuel.
Samuel's question has been answered.
Okay.
Yes, so we have from
Joshua.
Samuel, question has been answered. Okay, go ahead and speak.
Yes, thank you very much. With organizations that are operating in multiple sectors but have one reporting structure, what is the best approach for them to be able to capture all the sectors? Thank you.
Okay, so if I suppose the company will have a group structure with a parent company and then the rest, you know, reporting to the parent company. So usually if the parent company adopts it, you know, and becomes part of its reporting structure, then that one is very easy to trickle down to all the subsidiaries, and the subsidiaries must adopt. So for example, if I take MTN, for example, when it was adopted at their group level, right, then all the other operations across the world or across Africa were supposed to follow the same line. Do you see? So if your company is a group structure, then that becomes easy when it's adopted at the top. However, if it's not a group if it's a group structure, but the group level hasn't adopted it, and in the subsidiaries, any of them are regulated entities, right? Any of them are regulated entities. Those regulated entities must begin the journey to adopt. Okay, those regulated entities must begin the journey to adopt. And then the last bit I'll say is that it will depends on management. Management must also see the benefits. They must expose themselves to some training and some awareness on ESG to see the benefits, so that those at the group level can be able to drive it and make sure that all the subsidiaries adopt it in a very coordinated way to the benefit of the organization as a whole. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mr. Diko. So we have about 4 questions here. Let me quickly go through. So from Joshamenu, Mr. Diko, you mentioned that materiality assessment is a way to help companies identify and prioritize ESG issues that are relevant to their company. You also spoke about the global GRI and IFRS 1 and 2. Joshua wants to know what relevant issues should materiality assessment specifically consider, and does assessment framework has global reporting standard? If you can quickly just highlight on that, even though you mentioned that in your presentation.
Okay, so I want to repeat again, for the materiality assessment is the deal breaker in the whole process, because you are taking feedback from your stakeholders, okay? And to do the materiality assessment there's a framework for doing that, okay? There's a complete framework for doing that. The framework uses a risk management approach, okay? And when you are engaging your stakeholders, the information that you are taking from them is how important is this particular factor. When you list all the factors, you let them tell you how important is this particular factor. So you can create a rating of 1 to 5, 5 being very, very important and 1 being not important. So you can list all the factors. So if you take an insurance company, the first factor is maybe one of the factors that can come is if you take the social space, for example, employee well-being. Okay, if you take the environment side, maybe you want to talk about reduction in paper use of paper. Okay, because maybe insurance companies, they use a lot of paper in all their things. Okay, so when you have listed all the factors, then you sit down with your stakeholders. Then your stakeholder will tell you that between employee well-being and use of paper, they will tell you which one is very important. So paper, they will say that it's very important. So they'll give it a ranking of 4. And then when it comes to your employee well-being, that too is very important. So they'll give it a ranking of 5. So once you know that these 2 are very important, then you build your initiatives. So for the employee well-being, how will you do your initiative? It's through your HR policy. Okay, so maybe you want to introduce work-life balance. You want to introduce work from home. You want to introduce a scheme where staff can bring you create a place where the babies can, in fact, when I was working with MTN, I remember very well when MTN started this journey, these were some of the things that they introduced, right? They created a space where nursing mothers can come to work with their babies, and then they'll keep them at the nursing place. There's professional people there to keep them. So whilst you are working, you don't really worry about house help and all those things. Okay. And this was feedback that was given to the drivers, those who were implementing it for MTN. So basically that's it. Your stakeholders must tell you what is important, and you must build an initiative to support it, and then have the PPPs to support it, and you'll be very fine. Thank you. There's Joseph Awam. Please, if you can ask your question.
Yes, Joseph has an interesting question here. Okay, Joseph, if you would want to ask, kindly unmute and then speak.
Hello, good evening. Thank you for the opportunity.
Good evening.
I want to find out on the issue of material issues. You know how sometimes the response to, by stakeholders to issues may take a while or delay work. Is there a possibility to proceed with what you believe are material to the organization, material issues to the organization, and start some work as you wait to get the responses of stakeholders? Or do you always have to wait for stakeholders to give their feedback before you proceed? For instance, waste management, energy conservation, HR, certain HR issues or social issues are obvious issues you know and could proceed with, which you also believe stakeholders are interested in those issues. Can't you identify a way of rolling out your initiatives without, whilst you wait for stakeholders to come on board fully so that you get the process on? Or do you have to stall everything because of the framework or the process of carrying it out until stakeholders come on board? Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much for your question. So, one of the things that we must all understand is that the whole process is a risk management process. Okay, and in risk management, we use a lot of perception. Okay, we use a lot of perception. So, because the process is risk management, if for one reason or the other, right, your feedback is delayed or is not coming, and you can clearly articulate the way forward, there is nothing wrong in proceeding. However, in the process, you must do your documentation very well to not to appear as if the factors that you have labeled as relevant was coming from your stakeholders. So that's very important. Your documentation must clearly show that. Okay. Then continue with the process. In between or before you finalize, if the feedback comes, you have to go back and amend. Also, you would have another opportunity when the new calendar year starts, because I mentioned that the materiality assessment is not a one-off exercise. In some organizations, it is done annually. Some places, maybe twice, like every 2 years, based upon the policy that management has signed off. Okay. However, if it is a beginner, if it's an organization that has started the journey, my recommendation is that your materiality assessment should be done annually. Okay. So when you enter the next window for doing your materiality, and by that time, maybe the feedback has come, you can also update it with it or go back again and ask them if what they are giving you is still relevant or stay the same thing. So I would say that don't halt the process. Do your documentation to reflect that it was what was built by management. However, you are waiting for feedback from clients. If in your policy, there is a window for updates, when the next update comes, the update window comes, you update with it when the feedback comes, and then you are covered. And I say this because it's a risk management process. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Because of time, we'll take 2 more questions.
Hello. Hello.
Because of time, we'll take 1 more question and then that should end it.
Yeah,
Okay.
let's yes, Samuel.
Yeah, hello. Please, I'm also here. I have raised up my hand, but
Fiona, Joseph,
Oh.
I've never asked my question.
Okay,
Joseph,
please, Samuel, continue.
Please ask your question. After Samuel, Joseph, you continue. You also ask your question. I hope that works.
Okay.
yeah, I'm also here. Randolph.
Okay, so let's take all the 3 questions and then I'll answer all of them at once. Let's start with Samuel. Samuel, please, your question. Samuel, please unmute. You are muted. Unmute and ask the question. Okay, yes.
Can I be heard now?
Yes, we can hear you.
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay. Mine is actually a contribution to the question our brother just asked about the delay in the feedback from some of the stakeholders. The fear is that sometimes if you're not careful, you might end up totally ignoring the collection of the feedback from the various stakeholders. The input of the stakeholders is very vital because the businesses that we do is supposed to be something that you deal with other partners. So their views and their thoughts regarding your operations help you put a good structure ESG system that will be able to work for all. One we use in our institution, what we're doing, we assign champions to every stakeholder group. And that champion was responsible for making sure they bring all the feedback that was needed within a stipulated time. And I think we're able to get all of it. I am in the insurance industry. The only one that delayed was the issue of the regulator. So we had to proceed with our agenda, and later on, before we even went far, we got the feedback from the regulator. So we were able to incorporate it into what we were doing. So if any institution here, any company here is looking at doing that, the best shot I would advise is that you get people that will be responsible for any group of the stakeholders that you are going to be dealing
Samuel,
with.
please kindly make your contribution very short because of time.
All right. So I think I'll end here so others could ask questions. Thank you so much.
Yeah, hello. Can I ask my question?
Yes, please, Randolph, speak.
So please, I don't know if this session was recorded. I wanted to ask if it was recorded because some of us couldn't join in. So if it was recorded, can the link be shared so that we can at least also enjoy from what's gone on?
Sure,
Okay,
Randolph, we'll look at sharing it.
Yeah, it was recorded.
Okay,
We
Mr.
have the recording, and also the slides will be made available for everyone. Thank you.
All right, thank you.
Joseph, your last question.
Hello. Yeah, Mr. Nene.
Yeah,
Yes.
Joseph.
Globally, when we talk of the environment, we are not just looking at the physical environment, but we also talk of the social environment. And youth coming up, excuse my language, most tend to go little wayward. And from the onset of the presentation, I realized we are focusing more on the pollution, considering the physical environment. Are there steps in place to also put the social environment also into the play, considering the increasing numbers of social vices globally? Right.
Okay, thank you very much. So the social pillar is also a critical one in the ESG. The social pillar speaks to internal and external stakeholders, how the organization relates with the internal, external stakeholders. With respect to the external, it's looking at the community where organizations operate and how they positively impact the community. And I mentioned to you that organizations cannot just get up and do anything in the community. They must take feedback from their community. And then what the community is pointing them to, they must respond to that thing. So if the organization finds itself in a community where youth delinquency is very high, it is something that the community will raise. And for example, the community will raise it like unemployment. The organization is in the community. Let's say the organization is located at Dodowa, and all their employees are coming from Adenta, and is making the youth go without job and now becoming delinquents. Do you understand me? So the community will tell you, give you the feedback that our youth are going delinquent because they are not getting jobs from the organization. Then the organization will have to sit up, do their analysis, and they can say that this organization, youth from the community is 2%. Let us do something to increase it to, like, say, 6%. And when we do that 6%, you go and measure the impact on the community to see whether the delinquency rate is going down. You see, so you take feedback and then do appropriately. Please understand that the ESG for corporate organization has been built within a standard, and they must apply the standard in execution. And you can't just, do anything because there are people who are, going wayward. And also you must understand that there's the issues around climate, the issues around social, the issues around governance, they are all built within a framework. And once it is tackled based upon engagement with your stakeholders, you will be able to design an effective program to address those issues if it is an issue in the community. So let me give you an example. If I take MTN as an example, because I work there, for them, they have identified 3 social factors which they believe the community, the nation Ghana is telling them. So the 3 social factors are health, then education, and then economic empowerment. Okay, health, education, and economic empowerment. And this is where there are initiatives. And it's targeting youth. Okay, so a lot of their economic empowerment is targeting youth. And it's addressing the issue that you're talking about of youth going delinquent. Okay, so that's the response I'll give to you. Thank you very much. Over to you, Fiona.
Thank you very much, Mr. Adiko. To keep us on schedule, we'll take only one more question from Patience Pachi. She says that it's been insightful and practical. And then, are there NGOs that are already tracking ESG outcomes, reporting on sustainability in Ghana? So that will take us back to also add to her question, do we have companies that have started adopting ESG and started implementing it and reporting on it? And if so, what are the challenges that they are facing? If you can just briefly talk about this, and then we proceed to end today's presentation.
Okay. Thank you very much. Regarding organizations that are doing it and the challenges, I would allow my research team to share a research on what we have done. Kelvin, are you here?
Yes, Mr.
Hello, Kevin.
Kevin, we can hear
and
you.
speak to us. Turn on your camera and speak to us.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yeah, we can
Kevin,
hear
we
you.
can hear you.
Okay, so currently there's I don't know what is happening to my camera, so I don't know if I can just speak, but
Go ahead and speak.
Yes. Okay, so yes, so in terms of green fund and ESG,
Kevin, we might have lost you. We can't hear you.
Okay, so just to respond to that, we have organizations that are on the journey. If you go to the listed companies on the Ghana Stock Exchange, a total of about 31 listed companies, 16 have started the journey. And then of the 16 that have started the journey, there are a few of them with issues. So some of them, if you look at their reports that they submit, they don't, and you study their report very carefully, you could see that whatever standard that they have adopted, they are not fully compliant with the standard. Okay, and some of them to have indicated difficulties in implementing. So yes, there are challenges when companies start the journey, and the key thing is that they put in the effort to be able to get back on track and be compliant. Thank you.
Thank you very much,
hello,
Mr.
can I be heard?
Yeah, Kevin, we can hear you. Do you have a list of some of the companies?
Okay, yes. So just
Okay,
to
so you
add
can
to,
share.
I'm sorry about my network, but just to add to what Mr. Adiko said, right? So there are some companies that have already started, like he mentioned, the listed companies on the GSE. So we have companies like Access Bank, Cow Bank, GCB Bank, and I mean, just to name a few. Now, the challenges that some of them are facing when it comes to reporting on the ESG is that there is limited technical expertise and there is a low literacy in relation to ESG. So, I mean, in joining a webinar like this is very helpful because it will actually increase your literacy level to be able to report or know what is ESG to actually be able to report on it. Now, the another challenge they face is that the data that they were collecting was inconsistent. So the collection of the data, analyzing of the data, and then also the reporting on the relevant ESG items. So that those are some of the challenges. But yes, some companies in Ghana have started reporting on ESG, but we still have a long way to go in terms of following the requirements as laid out by the ICAG, by the BOG, and then other regulating bodies in the country. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Kevin. Thank you very much. Because of time, we'll wrap up. Thank you very much, Mr. Adiko. This has been very insightful. And then thank you all for your active participation. We appreciate your time and engagement.